Welcome back to Mac Football Forever. I'm Caleb Carter. That's Alex Alvarado. We're coming at you with another State of the MACtion video episode.
You killed it. You killed it. You actually killed it.
Thank you so
You knew
much. I am on
it.
top of it.
You are on top. You're at the apex.
You're going to get 5 things.
Your name is Capex.
Capex Predator. I have pecs. Last time I showed you the guns. This time I'm showing you the pecs. Anyway, nice delayed responses from everything. But, yeah, we're going to talk about Kent State Golden Flashes today. You know, a little bit of offense, a little bit of, completely lacking of, mostly completely lacking of defense. A lot of things going right for this program. Started to read up a little bit more this off really the last few hours leading up to this Thursday, January 28th podcast video episode. Alex hates it when I call it a podcast. I will never fully get it out of my head. But Alex, before we get into just those 5 points, in Kent State's shortened season this year, what were kind of your just a big takeaway or just overall thoughts about Kent State football?
I know Kent State can be fun. It just wasn't the funnest product ever, but, it's a COVID year. I shouldn't, it's just whatever. But, yeah, and I think what's cool is that we know that, as we look to 2021, sure, Isaiah McCoy's going to be gone, but Dustin Crum and Sean Lewis are going to be back. And we'll talk about how the offensive line was good too, but, it wasn't the best product, but I'm still looking forward to what Kent State has moving forward because the key pieces are still there.
Yeah. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. Let's just get right into the offense. So when we talk about Kent State, we were basically looking at an offense that was among the nation's most efficient this year. In some statistical categories, it was as efficient as any other offense. I'm not going to sit here and argue that it would outperform Alabama's offense, but there was an interesting metric that I saw that Kent State had as far as quality possessions go, this is kind of just like a specific, nitpicky statistic, had the highest rate of quality possessions in the playoff era, even better than this year's Alabama team. And all that metric was were your drives finishing, did you get a first down inside of your opponent's 40, or did you score on a big touchdown play? And if you've watched Kent State football this year, that makes plenty of sense. They moved the ball regardless of whether they finished it with points or not, but most of the time they got points out of it. And so I think it was about 77% of possessions, 77.6% of possessions, they did one of those two things. They got a first down inside of their opponent's 40, or they scored a big play touchdown. That's nuts, frankly. And to look at some of the offenses we've seen in recent years, the MAC, and you look at somebody like, even look just back to last year, like BG's offense, you look back to Akron's offense in 2019, that it's crazy to think of how much separation there was in those two respects. But I mean, we'll get into a little bit more about maybe why there's not as much of a difference talent-wise as you might think based on the disparity in those results. Mm-hmm. So a couple other points to get on as far as statistically. Kent State was the best in the MAC points per game, 49.8. They are tops in yards per play, second in rushing yards per game, even though they were, just slinging it around more than anybody in the MAC too. Yards per carry, they were balanced, 5.7 yards per carry, second in the MAC. They were the best third down team, the best fourth down team offensively. I mean, and you were able to throw it to McCoy, big touchdowns in a heartbeat. They have a crew of young running backs who, ranged between bulky and speedy and did everything they needed them to do. The only blip on the radar really kind of was the Eastern Michigan game.
Right, yeah. And if I could cut you off, though, I mean,
Sure.
I don't know how much I can really buy into those stats because if we're taking like how efficient they were like in those rates, in points per game at 50, yards per play at 7.5, at everything else, they're doing so good in the MAC at fourth down and third down. But they also only played Eastern, Bowling Green, Akron, and Buffalo. Buffalo was the best game, but Buffalo ran all over them. And
that's why we're not talking about defense yet.
Yeah, I mean, and like among the other 3 schools they played, there were 3 total wins there.
Yeah, I mean they absolutely should be doing these things against those teams. I mean, you watched Ohio struggle to move the ball against Akron this year. There's a reason that Kent State was so much more efficient against the same defense that an Ohio team could barely throw the ball against. So, they do a lot of things. They bring a lot of guys back. That kind of brings us into our next point. They don't lose a lot. They do lose Isaiah McCoy at wide receiver. That's, it's a big, fast guy who gets down the field, is a big target for them. But, I mean, they still return a ton. And I'm sure we'll get into it. And Alex, really liked McCoy. He had good things to say about him all year. Even before the season started, I think he was more aware of how much of a threat Isaiah McCoy was. But for guys that are coming back, Dustin Crum's obviously the big one, which in a sense kind of surprised me a bit because I thought at first it surprised me because I thought, holy crap, but he's an NFL caliber quarterback in a late round pick now. But, actually, when you actually think about how deep the quarterback class was in this draft, it just kind of makes sense that, he probably isn't, he's not going to stand a chance of getting drafted on day one.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm like a college quarterback of his caliber, I feel like, I'm either a day one or day two quarterback or I'm not. And, if he didn't feel like he was in that top 3 round range, then why bother? Like your odds of your forecast of being the fourth round quarterback pick, sure, there's like some good ones in there that have been, ended up having good careers, but
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, but get that money, man.
Seriously. So when you play, you wait another year, you have a chance to build the legend at Kent State, and keep making Kent State rise to heights they haven't achieved in a long time. Don't forget, they did just have their first bowl win in 2019. Dustin Crum has a chance to set some actual historical
and
precedent
beat a first round quarterback in that game too, which is very
potentially
important to add to his resume. No, not potentially. That was Jordan Love was
got you
in that bowl game. Yeah.
As far as other guys coming back, the running back room's still going to be stacked. Brian Bradford, Marquez Cooper, Xavier Williams, who, because of the uncertainty at wide receiver, I'm not sure if where they're going to fill in the spots there. I know that Kent State feels pretty good about its roster coming back next year, but I could see someone like Xavier Williams maybe going into the slot a little bit, or being used in the passing game a little bit more too. I know they try to use him in like the screen game and stuff like that. So I would be interested in seeing him split out a little bit more and see if he can be involved. But otherwise, based on what Lewis has done with the talent he has had, he's kind of been able to really target some big athletic kids with the few picks they went after during recruiting. So maybe it's somebody who can produce right away. Otherwise, Deshaun Pokey's back. He'll be the number one. Bill Kuduk was in the lineup this year after transferring from Kansas State. He was a second team All MAC guy. He's back. Nathan Monin is back on the offensive line as well after being a third team All MAC guy. And there's so much, talent there that, that you should continue to expect good things. But yeah, they might not score 50 a game next year when they're actually playing, central, good teams defensively on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, there's a lot. Defensively, there are some guys coming back that will be important. That kind of takes us a little bit more into the next point. The defense was gouged a lot next year, and so they're going to bring back some guys who are hurt, some guys that, who started. Keyshawn Gamble's a guy that a lot of people are going to recognize that name, at least if you pay attention to the MAC, and he's back. Antoine Richardson and Nico Bolden are 2 defensive back transfers coming in. Richardson's from Maryland and Bolden's from New Mexico, respectively. And then Keith Sherald, I actually don't know the pronunciation, is back at safety, and he'd started before. So defensively, Alex, obviously the Akron game was an example of where they really struggled to stop the run. Tion Dollard tore him a new one. Buffalo is the blatant example. Were there bright spots that you saw in Kent State's defense, or are they just basically unproven that they can field a good defense?
No, they were pretty unproven. I mean, we talked about it last week that Darius Boone had 50 yards in the first quarter against Kent State, and Kent State's fortunate enough to have Boone get injured in that game because otherwise he probably would have gone for 200. Kent State finished the season as one of 3 teams in the MAC that had 6 yards per carry against them. And of course, Jarrett Patterson had so much to do with it.
Yeah.
But what else had a lot to do with it was, Tion Dollard too, and that was a program that wasn't, Buffalo, you expect to get run over, but you don't expect to get run over by Akron, right? But they still let that happen.
Yeah.
And so there's just so much to fix there. And and Lewis has been there longer than Tom Arth too. So something has got to give there. Again, COVID year, don't really want to, don't know how much I should buy too much into it, but I can kind of buy in. I can buy into the idea that Kent State probably doesn't have a good rush defense. I can probably buy into it.
But they do return starters at defensive line and linebackers. So they're not proven, but they definitely have the chance to get better with a full off season and another year in that system.
They do have a chance to get better. That's for sure. That's what I'm hoping for.
It's up to them to prove that, because the pass defense should just be better, period. The front seven, they got to figure something out. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, since we did mention a few of the transfers, Nykeem Johnson from Syracuse. I think that could be one of the bigger potential transfers in the MAC this offseason, especially because Kent State was not particularly dangerous in special teams. Johnson brings a huge element to that team that they did not possess before. It's really not fair half the time when you've got a team that's as efficient as they are, and then the potential for someone like Johnson to give him a short field, like in big moments or big games, like that's huge.
Yeah, and like special teams, this is, we did talk about defense for this topic, but I guess it is important to bring up special teams and how it helps out the offense. Everything goes full triangle here. You and I were talking before, off air on here, and I was looking at like Kent State's like average field position, like how, like usually like how does its field position rank against its opponents, basically? Like how does it match up? And it was one of the worst in the country.
Yeah.
If you get a guy like Nykeem Johnson, who was an all ACC kick returner last year for Syracuse, if he can have that same sort of luck in the MAC, which I don't see why he wouldn't, speed kills, then that will definitely help out Kent State's offense a ton. And a better offense is always a good defense.
There's really a lot to be excited for, and stuff that'll be the front seven defensively is going to be the biggest question mark. I think that can kind of carry us into taking a look at where does Kent State stand. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this topic, but I think even right now that I still would have Kent State as my number one team heading into next year. A lot could change between now and the fall for me to change my mind on that. But just looking at the talent, looking at the potential for improvement, I would not surprise myself if come August 30th, August 1st, whatever, I'm saying Kent State's going to win the East.
Yeah, especially in a full season next year. Hopefully everything goes right. And I think Dustin Crum is that kind of quarterback that can like definitely get a team like Kent State into Detroit. It's just, I don't know. Kent State just hasn't seemed to figure it all out for an entire season, shortened or not. And that's been kind of the issue. They finished somewhere in the middle in that East sandwich, and I feel like that's kind of the right place for them right now, because I haven't seen enough really for most teams right now to like make me think that, they're definitely going to win the East next year. But I think Kent State's definitely in that. I could see how they miss out, though.
We'll talk more about it later, but Buffalo, Miami, Kent State probably all have a chance, and I think that's who we all kind of thought had a chance this year. I don't think Ohio's going to do anything to put themselves there either, so we'll probably be talking about the same teams. But for now, I think Kent State has the chance for the most improvement of any team in the MAC, and that's scary potentially. I mean,
well, what do you think's like going to be the thing that gets them to Detroit more than the thing that keeps them out?
So I guess you look at like the Kent State game or the Eastern game last year. It was just a matter of like them not looking good, and they still grabbed a win. They didn't look in tip-top shape. I think given the chance to play a full schedule, they're going to be rolling on all cylinders by the time the 4th, 5th game comes around. If they've got one MAC loss under their belt, they're cleaning up in the East. So I think when Kent State hits its stride with more games, like they're going to be all go. I don't think anybody's really going to stop them 2 games in a row all year. And defensively, because they have, some incoming transfers, I am hopeful that they figure out that. I mean, my own curiosity is like, I think they can figure it out defensively enough to, rise up the charts a little bit in defensive efficiency numbers or, yards per game rushing, stuff like that, because you have to figure something out based on how much you struggled last year. I don't know if it's more transfers coming in or what, but it's because of how much room they have to grow defensively that I think that they can elevate a lot.
Dibsy's on the last word for the Eastern games. So what I remember about that game, it was the first game of the year, and they got a lot of points. They, as in Kent State, got a lot of points early in the first half. It's like 28-3 in the first half. Was that the halftime score or something like that?
Was it 21? I don't know.
It was like a 2 or 3 score game though.
Sure.
And a lot of that was because Dustin Crum, got the success that he wanted to have with Isaiah McCoy. All you have to do is just beat 1-on-1, beat 2-on-1 with a young, unproven secondary out there, and they got a lot of points early for it. And then in the second half, Eastern forced Kent State into, I think, like 3 or 4 straight punts in that half. But Kent State still hung on to one. Isaiah McCoy is not there anymore. If you take him out of the picture and you just face them against a little bit more of a proven defensive secondary, I don't know what that matchup looks like right now. But I don't want to get too caught up into that game, obviously. But it is just something that I keep thinking about now because I'm an Eastern grad and I have nothing to do in this winter. Moving on to our last topic.
Yeah, let's talk about the guy that's got them there. Let's talk about Sean Lewis briefly. Lewis, was the youngest FBS coach in the country when he was hired, and has completely turned around a program that, we've got a group of MAC friends, and we just made fun of what Kent State's offense looked like for like 5 years, because they couldn't feel the quarterback, they couldn't throw the ball, they were bad year in year out. Historical precedent, like just put them in a point where they didn't recruit anybody, they didn't have anything, they were lucky to have a few guys. Or a year here and there. Now you expect them to be good every year. Maybe not the best, but you expect them to be good. And Sean Lewis is the reason for that. There's so much buy-in. They have seen the results very quickly. And the roster, again, this is based off Alan Moss reporting, saying is basically he felt pretty good about where the roster was after they got commitments from the guys to come back, like the seniors on the roster who were coming back. Obviously, when Dustin Crum's coming back, you're saying the right things and you've got a great relationship. When you're looking at all of the guys coming back in a program that had the success it had, he's done enough already that I have the faith that this coaching staff under Sean Lewis is going to have a couple guys elevate to a point that we didn't see from them last year in the short amount of time we did. And more time in the offseason, more time earlier in the season against non-conference opponents potentially would yield results that we're going to see come up big down the stretch next year. I think Sean Lewis is a wonderful football coach. I think the results are showing that already. At the risk of just, moaning on and on about him, I think it's the reason that he's going to be in a Big Ten or an AAC job in a couple of years.
Yeah, I know. It's just, he's only been there for 3 years, but still, like, it's something that people were pushing to expect to happen already. I don't know. I don't want to push it any more than, the process should come to him. We saw some jobs come and go that we thought that we, as in people that care about the MAC, I guess, people thought that he'd take the Illinois job, frankly, or, some other jobs that opened up, locally. I don't know what the right fit for Lewis is. I think it's fun for me to think about, his future because he's still so young at 34. Yeah. I wonder if maybe the next job for him might be in the NFL. I wonder if, 1, he's qualified enough for that. 2, he wants that. And 3, I kind of wonder if he spends a year or 2 or 3 or 4 in the NFL, just really dominating or at least getting the best knowledge possible to mastercraft, what it takes to be the best wide receiver. Because that's where he's going to make his money, is being a actual wide receiver coach as a head coach, kind of like how Dabo Swinney is too. And if he could come back and say, hey, I'm 38, I have a really good head coaching resume already to show for in Kent State because I was doing pretty good things at Kent frickin' State. And I did okay in the NFL, or at least I have experience in the NFL. At that point, he's looking at P5 head coaching possibilities for a life.
Yeah. And you know what? And if there's anything we love to do, I think all of that's fair and all of that's reasonable. But if there's anything that we football fans love to do in the offseason, it's we love to project. Projecting on head coaches is our favorite pastime.
I love ignoring my real responsibilities in life.
Projecting on these potential futures is our favorite thing. And so Kent State's a hell of a fun team to project about, and they make talking about them fun. So an episode like this just flies by. So again, thank you for joining us as we talked about the Kent State Golden Flashes. Really fun team that we're going to have a lot of fun watching in the fall. And I keep saying fun, but it's because they are. And, the ride to Detroit could be pretty enjoyable next year if they're in that spot. So for Alex Alvarado, that guy over him with the hat.
Thank you for speaking for me.
Yeah. I'm Caleb Carter. Thanks for having us. Thanks for joining us in your earbuds, on your computer, whatever. See y'all later.